Hey guys, it's Michael. Welcome back to my YouTube channel and welcome to a new video. In this video, you will find a step-by-step guide on how to get rid of lateral elbow pain symptoms like tennis elbow symptoms that occur during dips, skull crushers, overhead presses, and so on. So stay tuned for the video. A YouTube video should never replace a doctor's appointment. The strategies that I will show you in the video will only work if your elbow pain is related to technical or mobility deficits in those exercises I named in the introduction. So if you don't have these mobility deficits, those strategies won't work for you and you should definitely visit a doctor. So at first, let's take a look which areas of interest in our body exist that we can modify and work on to decrease the symptoms of lateral elbow pain. Of course, we have the first two parts here because our upper arm and our forearm, they're moving together doing elbow flexion, so bending the elbow and extending the elbow. And most of you will think it's an easy hinge motion, but that is not 100% accurate. There is some rotation going on in the elbow while you are bending and while you are extending. So the first area of interest to fix our extension movement pattern, which is what we want to do to get pain-free doing dips, doing presses, doing skull crushers, is to reinstall full range of motion in pronation. Together with pronation, we want to reinstall shoulder internal rotation. And in order to reinstall shoulder internal rotation, we need to reinstall especially the anterior rib cage mobility here around your upper sternum manubrium area. You don't really need to understand why that's the case, but that will be the chain that works together doing elbow extension and so internal rotation dominant movements. And if we can reinstall mobility in our upper rib cage here, reinstall internal rotation mobility in our shoulder, and reinstall pronation ability in our forearm, there is a very high chance that you can decrease your lateral elbow pain. And as I promised you, we're not going to do too much theory, but rather giving you a sequence that helps with decreasing pain. That is exactly what we're doing. And we're starting with the exercise number 1, which tackles especially the upper rib cage. So what we're now trying to achieve is to get more expansion in this side of our rib cage. So following exercise, you will put your feet flat on the floor. You will have roughly 90 degrees in your knees, and then you put your hands on the floor like this. So you pronate your forearms, and then what we're going to do is we will breathe in our nose and breathe out through the mouth. And while you are breathing in the nose, you will feel your chest expanding and you will feel a decent stretch in your shoulder. So we're kind of mobilizing shoulder extension by opening up this space here with this exercise, and at the same time we're working on our pronation. And what I want you to do with this exercise is 3 sets of 5 to 10 deep breaths. It's very important that you breathe through the nose into your chest, not into your tummy. The second area of interest after we opened up our manubrium, our upper rib cage with the first breathing exercise, will be triceps work. Because if we are working on elbow extension, as I'm showing you here, we will always work on shoulder internal rotation and pronation. And what I will show you now are different triceps exercises that you can use as a pre-activation pattern before your exercise. And depending on your primary movement that you're going to do, there will be different exercises helping you. Because what you need to take a look at is that different push exercises require different levels of shoulder flexion. And so different areas where you need to learn to internally rotate your upper arm within the shoulder. So it's different if we're going to dip, if we're going to bench, or if we're going to do an overhead press. So step by step, we're going through the exercises. The first one is a pronated triceps extension like that. So what you want to do is you get on the cables, grab yourself a pair of D handles, and you grab it in a pronated position. Now, what is important is that we really use active range from the shoulder, and we're not shrugging our scapula around the rib cage to compensate for more internal rotation. So sternum points forward, your upper arm starts in roughly 90-degree angle and the shoulder remains neutral. And then you extend the elbow like that. You can automatically feel and see this is helping me to move my upper arm in internal rotation. If this is an exercise you cannot do yet because you will always need to shrug the shoulder or lean in a different direction, you can start in a supinated grip. It has a bit less demands on internal rotation, and it's another great exercise that you can start with if the first one that I showed you with the pronated grip is not possible yet for you. The second exercise is really a game changer when it comes to fixing uneven dips. Often what we see with uneven dips is that we have one shoulder shrugging up. And if you will take a look at the back view of a dip, this is often related to the inability to move the arm back within the socket of the shoulder. And that is a motion that is supported by the triceps and that requires shoulder internal rotation. So we can mobilize this or pre-activate this movement and teach our body to use our triceps to push the arm back in its socket and internally rotate it. So how we're going to do that is we are using a triceps kickback variation with a few modifications. So we have that regular triceps kickback like that, and it's roughly the same. But what we are going to do is we will hinge a bit at the hips. We will push our elbow as much backwards as we can, and then we're performing a triceps extension in that position. And you need to pay close attention to a few compensation mechanisms. The first one will be again here, shrugging up the shoulder. Don't do that. Keep it neutral. Second one will be abducting the arm, so pushing the elbow away from the body. Don't do that. Keep it close. And the third one will be a rotation towards the side to gain range of motion. Keep your sternum roughly pointing to the floor like that. And there is a high chance that you're doing the exercise correctly if you feel a great sensation in the long head of your triceps, so here in the inside of your arm. Okay, so for the triceps kickbacks, again, we're using the D handles or just the cable itself, doesn't really matter. I like to hold myself onto the cables and then pushing the elbows back and then extending it. And as you see, I also have the tendency to open up here, but I want to keep my sternum pointing down. And I will feel also a very great sensation here, and this will help me in my dips to really be able to move the elbow backwards, so to internally rotate the upper arm, and so to also have a better elbow extension. So very, very great exercise to help with your dip and to decrease your elbow pain. As I told you, different pushing exercises require different levels of shoulder flexion. When it comes to executing them pain-free, it is a big advice from my side to only use exercises that are within your active range of shoulder flexion. So if you are trying to do skull crushers on the rings in this range of motion, but you don't have the shoulder flexion, all you need to do is arch like that and then move here, it's probably not a great exercise for you. So before you're doing pushing exercises, also overhead pressing exercises, make sure to check your active range of motion in shoulder flexion. So if I have my hand in here, I will feel the moment my rib cage goes up, and this is where it's already not my active range anymore, or where I start to abduct my arm. So if I go up here, so you can see my active range is somewhere in that 60 to 70 degree range. So for me, exercises will have a very, very low risk of providing me stress in the shoulder, and so also in the elbows if they are within my active range. Because if I go above that range, I need compensation movements. And compensation movements often lead to overloading in areas where we don't want to have this overloading. So in order to get better at those ranges, what we can do is use overhead triceps extension movements. And the good thing on the cables is that we can modify the height, and I can modify the angle of my elbow. So if I want to work within my active range, like, you know, getting pain-free in a skull crusher, where I need this internal rotation somewhere in this angle, I can practice and get better at that if I use a movable handle. Because what happens on the skull crushers is that I'm forced into that pronated state, even if I have the range of motion or not. So I'm forced into that range, and if I don't have the mobility to internally rotate here, this is what can cause the discomfort and stress in our elbow. So a better solution, and at the same time an exercise to get better at that, is an over-shoulder triceps extension, where we pay an extra interest to that pronation movement. So again, keep my shoulder stable, I don't shrug, I don't move it. I can also support my elbow here, and then what I do is I pronate at the end. Like that. And I can also change the angles in which I perform this exercise. Short summary for the program that we covered so far. Exercise number 1, breathing pattern to get motion into our manubrium and to get range into our upper rib cage. The next exercises are to mobilize internal rotation in our upper arm in different levels of shoulder flexion that we need for our upcoming exercise. And now, stage 3 of the program will be focused more isolated on the pronation of the forearm. It is, of course, also tackled with those triceps exercises, but if we need an extra portion, we can use the following exercise, which is the Zottman curl. So what we're going to do is we keep the elbow pretty close to our body and we keep it there. Then on the way up, we supinate. We hold it, we pronate without abducting the arm, so pronation, and then we slowly go down. Curl, pronate, slowly go down. Curl, pronate, and slowly go down. And with this free exercise sequence in your program, there is a high chance that on the long run, you will get rid of your lateral elbow pain. And now, in the last step, I want to give you some advice on how to program this stuff into your program. At the end of this video, we're going to take a look at how we can integrate this exercise or this sequence into our program. And when it comes to the main lifts, as this is mostly a street lifting related channel, the main exercise of interest for us is the dip. And when it comes to the dip, we need to put those exercises up front because we need to create the possibility to move our bones, our joints into the required range of motion, because otherwise with a lot of load in the dip, we will then create the stress if we don't have the range of motion that we need to. So if we're looking at the program, what I would advise to you is the breathing exercise. Breathing, we're gonna do 2 to 3 sets of 5 to 10 deep inhales followed by exhales. Then we are going to do the triceps kickbacks. We're gonna do 3 sets, around 10 repetitions, sub RPE 6. We don't want to get tired in that structure. We want to create range of motion. We want to make the muscle warm. We want to keep it working, but we should not get tired. So make sure that the intensity is very low. And as I said earlier in this video, if you feel you cannot create this range of motion yet, you can do this pronated or supinate triceps extension first for another 1 or 2 sets. And with these 2 exercises, you can then go into your warm up for the dips. That means you carefully ramp up towards your warm up set, towards your top set. And that is super important because this is pre-activation, creating range of motion. It is not sufficient to then jump directly straight into your top working set with adding 50, 60 or whatever kg you have on the belt. So after that, it's still important to have a specific warm-up on the exercise. So to ramp up towards that main movement. Then, second part here is overall improvement of internal rotation in the shoulder and pronation in the elbow. And this is what we're gonna do with really just regular arm training. And I cannot tell you how important that is if you want to create better ranges and better internal rotation in your upper arm. Then just train your triceps and train it hard. And important, train it without compensations from the shoulder. So choose a working weight that you can really control in all these ranges and where you don't shrug and lean and do everything but really letting the upper arm rotate. And how you do that, depending on where there is space in your program, I would advise 2 to 3 times per week, you gonna do 2 to 4 sets of triceps work, RPE somewhere between a 7 and a 10. So very, very hard sets. And if you don't have proper range of motion yet, then I would advise you to use exercises where the forearm can move freely. So don't use skull crushers on the rings, don't use the EZ bar, rather use dumbbells or D handles on the cables because your forearm can move freely, and so you have a higher chance to really create internal rotation without any discomfort. Third stage, as I said, was adjusting the triceps exercise towards the need also of shoulder flexion in your program. And that requires different angles of shoulder flexion. So depending on the exercises in your program, if it also has overhead ranges in. I would also advise you to do at least once a week triceps work where you progressively increase the shoulder flexion angle, and then over the course of the weeks, you maybe start here and then you move your way up with your active range. Last disclaimer for today and for this video. All of these exercises with the best execution, all of this additional programming advices with the best integration possible won't give you results if you are not able to have a good structure in your main lift itself. So if you're constantly working too heavy, overshooting, if you're training too much, or even training too less but then too heavy, it won't help you, because the first and the most important part with all rehab processes is proper load management. So if none of this is working for you, there is a high chance that we have two different problems here. The first one is it's not a mobility or technique related issue. It might be a nerve issue or something else, and that definitely requires the help of a doctor. So then make sure to definitely schedule an appointment there. Second possible option is that your load management is very, very bad. That means you're training over the capacities that your body has. And in that case, make sure that you really restructure the program, that you work more progressively, and that you work within your capacities. If you need help with integrating like this, rehab exercises or pre-activation exercises in your program, setting up proper load management, or maybe even get rid of other discomforts like elbow pain in the inside of the elbow, which will then be kind of the opposite of that program here, then let me know, schedule a free consulting call, 4-hour coaching, and we will figure out a solution. And of course, all of these concepts here also applied in my street lifting program. For the whole January, it's still 24% off, so make sure to get your program now.